know your burn rate, how much supply you have, how much you've requested from FEMA, and how much has shown up. If you're requesting 10,000 respirators and you're getting 80, that's a story. They're letting you down. You may have 4 days left at the current burn rate that you're going. That's a story. Start the story now that you're about to run out. The quicker you engage the media, the more they're going to follow the story along. And when I say the media, usually it's going to be somebody that you've identified. We'll get into that a little bit more, but for right now, it's just we're going to use the media. It's not just this undefined term like certain people like to say the media is out to get them. So that's step one, is making sure you have all of your data, right? It's not a story if you don't have data. The media, reporters, investigative journalists all want numbers to tell the story, but they also want anecdotes. So you're going to have to identify somebody that can tell the story on personal terms. One of your firefighters, one of your EMTs, paramedics, who is out there working in the field, who is working without the gear or is afraid that they're not going to have the gear. You see them, doctors, nurses, everybody on TV talking. The one exception that we're going to have there is make sure it's somebody that is protected under the union executive board or under your constitution and bylaws. Don't just pick some young kid because he looks like a firefighter that you can put out there to tell his story, unless the fire chief signs off as well. You can try to work with your chief on it, but I'd prefer we use somebody from the executive board or a communications director that has that protection, that they can't discipline you for talking to the media. So to start, we've got all of our data. We know the story we want to tell. We need to start pushing out on social media what's going on. Everybody on this call should have a robust social media plan or social media platforms already going. Use those to start telling the story about the fact that your runs are up, that you're making COVID runs, that firefighters are wearing PPE. You're going to create the first part of that story by telling it on social media. And you're going to tag the media in it. Tag reporters that you know are going to tell the story. Tag reporters that are your friends. Tag the news outlets in your area so that they start seeing it, so that they share it. So the first time they hear from you isn't, hey, we're out of PPE, help us tell this story. They have the background where they already know that you're responding. They already know the PPE that you're wearing through the social media. Plus, you're softening the ground in the public for that story as well. So then we're going to identify who the best contact is for you. If you're in a large city, like in Cincinnati, I know I had 4 TV stations that all had their investigative reporter, and I had a city hall reporter at the newspaper. It was pretty easy for me. I knew who to reach out to. As you look at some of your cities, it may be a newspaper reporter. It may be the one investigative reporter that you think is, the best person to tell the story that you have a relationship with. It may just be the general news reporter that because he or she did stories on fire ops or the 5K that you had. Reach out to them, let them know that you have the story to build that relationship moving forward. They may not be the one that eventually tells the story, but by reaching out to them first and saying, hey, I have this, we're running out of fire gear, I think it's a good investigative story, they can then take it to their investigative team, who you may not know. It gives that reporter a chit inside the building, and it gives you a chit with them to cash in later. So if I know, Corey Rose in Colorado is a good friend of theirs, they reach out to her, and she then reaches out to the investigative reporter and kind of makes that synergy happen so that everybody's on the same page. She's getting accolades for bringing it to them. And for the investigative reporter, it's a bigger story because it's coming from one of his colleagues than just a cold call from one of you. So you're going to identify them. Call first. Back in the day, when I first started doing this, we'd write a news release about it all, right? And then we'd fax it out. Does anybody even have faxes anymore, or have I completely dated myself on that? Then we kind of moved on where we'd email it out to them. We'd email this nice formed news release, and it was an attachment, and they could click it out, and they'd print it out, and they'd hand it to their assignment desk. I still would have a news release or an email that has the facts there, but I wouldn't send it until I reached out and talked to that reporter. Call them, find out who they are, and call them. Maybe it's not a reporter. Maybe you don't have any contacts there. You don't have an investigative reporter that would be good. You're going to want to reach out to the assignment desk at your TV station or the editor at the local newspaper. They'll be able to assign it out there. But I would always start, unless you know this person very well, with a phone call, because that gives you the opportunity to pitch it one-on-one. They're not reading it on a piece of paper. It doesn't get lost in their inbox. It doesn't get lost after they print it out, put it on somebody else's desk. They're talking to you one-on-one. That's the first way I would pitch, is to find them, call them, tell them what's going on, explain to them in real people terms what it is that you're seeing. We're ordering gear from FEMA. We're not getting it. We're ordering it from the state stockpile. We're not getting what we need. Our suppliers can't give it to us. And lay out your story to them. Before you call them, though, you want to have the story idea like you want it to be told, so you can lead them into the way you want it. If you just call and say, hey, I got a story idea. We don't think FEMA's helping us out. That's not, you're giving them a lead, but you're not giving them the story that you wanted. The story that you wanted is, hey, I've got a story. Firefighters have been responding to this COVID crisis in the first line of public health this entire time. We're using all of this gear. We're using PPE kind of more than we ever have before. We keep trying to order it. FEMA keeps sending less than we're asking for, or we get there to pick up our supply and it's gone because they took it to wherever else. FEMA came in and swooped in. We sent that email out Friday. Everybody should have gotten the email about what's going on with FEMA. Check it out. It is up on the website now, as well as a story with some links. I'll get to the Washington Post story in a second. So you've reached out to the media. You've given them your idea. The next step is to do the interview, right? Normally, you'd say, hey, come, we'll meet. We'll do the interview wherever. In today's socially distanced world, it's going to be a little different. You're going to have to find a good way to do it. You're going to have to find a crisp camera. You're going to have to make sure that your Zoom, your Skype, your FaceTime is lit well, that you're framed well, and that you have PPE to show. Now, for some people, that'll be a little tougher to hold up a mask and say this is whatever. So we have a B-roll package. One of the things that we did, the IFF through E18, when we filmed some of those videos that you've seen online, is we created a B-roll package. If you're doing an interview on PPE and you want that package, call me. I'll send it to you, and you can send it directly to your news station, and they can then show it in the background as you're talking. What it does is it's a lot less of your face and a lot with and images of firefighters doing firefighter things in the background while you're talking, while you're exchanging your ideas with that reporter. People are seeing what you're talking about in real time. It just helps drive that message home a little bit more. And that is something that we've created for you. If you have the ability to create your own, do that instead. The stuff we've got is from the DC metro area, and it's good. But if it's your firefighter showing the gear that you're using, it's going to be more powerful for people. It doesn't take a lot. It really is just you with your iPhone, your iPad on a tripod, filming your firefighters donning and doffing the gear, or, whatever kind of drill you're doing that morning on the gear, you can film to show what you've got. If you're allowed to do that in your firehouses, some people aren't. That's going to go a long way to helping you tell that story as well. The more prepared you are, the better the story is going to be, because it's less work that reporter has to do. And that's kind of our goal. So then once you reach out, you're going to tell your story. I would start with one reporter, with one station, with one assignment editor, and go from there. To call them all the same day and see if they're interested in it is going to be either a lot more work for you to have to do that time, or they're not going to be interested. They want to be the exclusive. They want to be the first one to tell the story. And when you have that conversation with them, let them know, hey, calling you first because we're friends, or because You guys do the best job telling these stories, and we think it's a good story for you. So we called you first. Are you interested in this story? Giving them that exclusive, that chance to break the news is a lot more likely to get your story told when it comes time to do it. So, and then let's say that you were successful, you did the story, you did the interview, it was great. You're not done. The best thing you can do after that interview, once all is said and done, once you've got the link from their website, is to amplify it on your social media. Your social media are people that we know are engaged with you, that have seen all the messages that you're putting out all along. And now that the news has done this story that you are running out of gear, that FEMA hasn't helped you, that becomes a validator to everything else you've been saying. So it helps you build that reputation as the community safety advocates even more. That everything we said is true because Channel 7 News now said it's true as well. So I think that's a big part of it. The other options, and like I said, I didn't want to take a lot of time, but one of the other options that we have out there is the idea of doing an op-ed to the newspaper. Op-eds are good to build your brand like long-term. It's one of the reasons we put the op-eds in all the toolkits. If you're interested in doing an op-ed, let me know. We can help you create that. And then once that's in the newspaper, you can build your media off of that. When you call these people, your pitch then becomes, hey, did you see the op-ed in the Post today? We're running out of gear. This is what they said. If you're interested, we can help you tell the story visually. Give me a call. Right? Those are kind of the ways that I think are going to go a long way. I just saw the chat where Mark is posting different stuff too. One of the things that'll help you localize it is the Washington Post story. Washington Post did a story on Saturday, I believe it was, that laid out all the problems that states are having with FEMA. They interviewed a bunch of governors, a bunch of high-level people who are saying, we're not getting the gear. We're ordering, we're getting 50%. It's going here, it's going there. What we've found through some of our research is when FEMA gets a shipment from, what are called air bridge, it comes in, it lands at the airport. 50% of it is taken off the top, given to suppliers so they can meet the needs of their clients. And the other 50% goes to public health somehow. Where we're getting forgotten is the public health part. The Rear Admiral that's in charge of the supply chain the other day, in the article, said first responders are way down here. It's public health, nursing homes, who else, like tattoo parlors, and then first responders. Tattoo parlors isn't real. I'm just trying to laugh, and I forgot everybody's on mute, so I can't hear you laugh with me. So we are not there. Their Congress, president have said that first responders are ranked there, but we know when FEMA's dishing out the gear, we are not there. And that's why it's important that we start telling this story. If you are one of those departments that has run out of gear or is about to, I need to know that from the national story as well, so that I can start talking to our contacts here and saying, I know Omaha is about to be out of gear. They're expecting a shipment of 8,000 masks today, and they got 4 masks. We know they're going to be out soon. Keep an eye on them. It helps us identify them, but it also then helps you tell that story. If you're talking to the Omaha newspaper, the Omaha TV station, and you say, look, even the Wall Street Journal says this is a problem here, they're a lot more likely to pick up on that. That's really all that I wanted to go over. And like I said, I just wanted to be quick, 10, 15 minutes with y'all to give kind of the overview of what we're talking about, and then open it up to you guys to hear what's going on. Like that's the one thing that we wanted the most here, was that back and forth, so that you can tell us where your fire department is. What are you doing? Are you out of gear? Have you had trouble getting N95, so your department's decided that you're going to use P100s, SCBAs. I know I talked to somebody earlier who said their department is out of gowns, so they're only allowed to wear them on the run. They're not allowed to wear them when they decontaminate. That's a story we're helping them tell. Those are the type of things. You're not alone on this. We are here to help you. If you don't know who your contacts should be, I can have Tim Byrne help you pull a list out of a service that we have. If you know who they are, you're not sure exactly how to pitch, give me a call. We'll go through it. We'll talk about getting you ready for that. We'll get the story set to where you can tell it. But again, the biggest thing to all of this is that preparation in advance of getting all of that data together. Does that make sense? Let me put it to you guys. Start sharing with me some of the experiences that you're having out there so that we know what's going on.
Hey, Doug, I was just going to add something to that, where hopefully there's other people positioned like us where we're really well resourced right now. Our PPE is in a good position. So what I'm trying to do is work a story from the other angle and say, hey, look, even though first responders, firefighters are the first ones there, we need this PPE, it's critical to us. We're doing the best we can to make sure that there's enough to go around. So we're finding ways to help. As much as I hate it, we're trying to help the police to make sure they have PPE. We're trying to come up with replenish and cleanse their cloth masks that they wear over their two PPE or two N95s that they're issued, and trying to make that a story. Is we have what we need for now, but we're trying to conserve it because we know others need it right now. So
yeah, and I think that gets back to that where we talk about what you're doing now in advance of a shortage. By telling the story now that you've got it and that you're working with people, if you do run short, then not only are you telling the story up front now to get the positive in there, but it becomes an even bigger deal when you run short, right?
Right.
Like, Omaha had everything we needed for 3 months and we were helping everybody else. And now that we need help, nobody's there to help us.
And it keeps everybody's eye on what's really going on. So you might have it now, but because they weren't paying attention and they weren't paying attention to the trends, they dropped the ball and we ran out. Let's hope that doesn't happen. We hope that doesn't happen to anybody, but that's a story, and it gets the media that you're working with to start monitoring the situation a little more closely.
Yeah. Who did you say? I dropped out. Who did you say was running out?
Nobody's running with it yet, but I'm working with a couple reporters to get them to do that story.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's good. That's the positive side of the story that I suggested on social media. But if you have the contacts, you can start telling that story now. I think putting ourselves as part of the public health responders is going to be critical kind of moving forward on everything. Aside from just the PPE story that we're talking about here, we need to make people fully understand that firefighters are paramedics and EMTs as well, and we are responding to this crisis. The words we're using are first link in the public health system. We work in uncontrolled environments, and we're always gonna keep responding. One of the questions that I get from media quite often is, "What happens when you're out of PPE?" And the answer that I kind of tell them is, we're going to keep responding. It'll look completely different. We're going to have to change a lot of our procedures, but our goal is to not get there, right? So I think, if you can right now tell the story to put your fire department, like Trevor's doing, in that public health conversation, I think that's a great first step as well. And it's possible because by now, most of your media has told the story about the healthcare workers, and they should. This guy deserves a ton of credit. They've moved on through the grocery store employees and other essential workers, and they're looking for another story. And I think this is their chance to tell your story. You just have to identify who they are. And a lot of that goes back to the research of knowing who, of being a good, student of the media in your area, of digesting what's going on. And you guys certainly know who the reporters are in your area that cover your stuff. You know who your city hall reporter is. You know who the hotshot investigative reporter is out there, who when they do a story, people are like, this guy's good and he's going to get to the bottom of it. I don't know that I'd start a good story with the investigative guy necessarily, but if you're looking to do a story that's, that places you in the middle of public health, that's a story you should all be doing right now, working to tell it, and then building the relationships to eventually, if you have to tell the story about running out of PPE, telling that story. Does that make sense? So what are some of you guys doing out there? I mean, this is the interactive part, so interact.
So one of the things we're doing in my community, Doug, is we've gone to essentially a single unit response to pretty much every incident, unless we receive indication we need additional units to go. The biggest exception is going to be with structure fires, where you have to have a multi-company response. A lot of the prevention mechanism, or at least trying to keep the exposure risk low, is involving a single medic going in and assessing the situation, determining if we need additional help to come in from our apparatus, or if we're doing a response for a high risk call like a cardiac or respiratory distress. We'll stage outside until the single medic goes in and says, hey, we need you. We're doubling up on our respiratory precautions. We're wearing K95s, not N95s, because that's what we were able to access. And we're also putting surgical masks over them. Gowns, of course, with any kind of COVID, screening that comes back positive. We're trying to keep orders up every day. However, supplies are running low for things like gowns specifically. We've entered into a new program starting today where we're actually sanitizing our masks. So the K95s, ours actually just went in for sanitizing procedures today, with the hopes we'll have them back by next shift.
Who's doing that sanitizing?
So they went through the University of Florida, if I remember correctly, through our medical direction team. And so they're utilizing their teams. They brought the equipment in. They did a study prior to, they did a culture study, before they introduced the procedure to determine if it was even, appropriate to do, and it came back with good results. So I guess there's a lifespan of X amount of, sterilizations, and then they have to consider buying a newer mask or a new mask in general. So we're allowed to wear our masks for up to 24 hours or 4 shifts, depending on how you view that. And once they go out, we're not going to get the same mask back. However, we'll get a sanitized mask. And I think they're using hydrogen peroxide as the sanitizing agent.
Okay. Are there a lot of other people that are sanitizing masks like that out there? I see people heads nod.
I couldn't speak for outside of Lake County, but I can tell you that where we're at, that's the procedure and the direction we're taking at this point.
It's our plan B as well too for our masks if we run out.
The biggest problem though is we've gone to not the N95, but the K95, I think it's what it's called. And it's not a fitted mask per se. I mean, you have to do the sniff testing and the whole process to be cleared to wear it. But the way it sits on your face, I mean, if you have a rounder face or maybe a narrow face, it's not necessarily designed for either one per se. I mean, it's just a one size fits all kind of mask where you can go with a regular or small or a medium sized mask essentially with the N95s. So that's another concern, and that's why I think they're making us double up with the surgical masks on every call. And the one concern a lot of us had they've asked us to reuse the surgical masks repeatedly until they get soiled. And then again, what's the definition of soiled? I mean, if we're going to wear the same surgical mask over the N95 or the K95, where do we determine soiling or not? I mean, that's one of the bigger questions we've had to this point.
Hey, up here in Idaho, we are only using N95s if we are intubating or having a nebulized treatment or bagging somebody, so that you have that's nebulizing or spraying particles. Otherwise, we're just using surgical masks, but we are, however, using the Scout EMS medic to go in, and we're keeping a driver clean. They can have PPE on. We've separated the cab from the patient compartment with Visclean and Gorilla Tape. But if you can get somebody into the ambulance by yourself, it's recommended. If you can handle it in the back by yourself, it's recommended. If you need another medic because you have a real call and it's serious, then you just have somebody else PPE up. You have everything right there. We're not able to use anything yet, but the hydrogen peroxide fogger does work really well. I know they have it down in Boise for ambulances. But yeah, the N95, first of all, like you said, there's no such thing as one size fits all. Just like SCBA masks, that's bullshit. But yeah, it's not recommended that you need those unless somebody's doing something like being gagged, intubated, or nebulized treatment.
So to piggyback on that real quick, we have essentially stopped using aerosolized medications unless it's an absolute necessity, and CPAPs as well. But not to say we won't. We have filters now that will attach to the tubes if we have to utilize an iGel, which is our secondary means of airway procurement, or if we have to go with the tube directly. So that filter is designed to catch the particles coming back, so you can prevent aerosolization of the lungs, you know, the contaminants coming back out. It's good to hear that the hydrogen peroxide testing is working. You know, again, a lot of the concerns, and I think this is going to come up Thursday when we go back to work, is where are our masks? Because if they're not there, that's going to kind of change things. We haven't gone down to the surgical mask alone unless it's just a general daily thing if we're not going to a COVID call. But pretty much everything we're responding to right now is hitting isolation precautions as soon as it comes out. You know, even the benign calls are triggering an isolation precaution. And I think that's the other concern, is we're starting to see a small uptick in the now latter period of the disease process in my community, where, you know, people are starting to show real symptoms. And my community is predominantly 65 and over, being just outside of the villages. So we see some bad patients, and you know, that's going to be concerning when we start running out of gowns, masks, and the appropriate PPE that goes along with that here. And I'm afraid that we're going to get to that peak, and it's going to happen sooner than later.
Yeah, the one thing that you mentioned that was really important is like reaching the criteria from dispatch. And we already had our first peak, so we mellowed down a little bit, but I don't consider the criteria, because it's community spread at this point, and there are so many different signs and symptoms that I don't care if you cut your leg off with a saw. I'm going to toss you a tourniquet and put my PPE on. That's just the way we have to do it right now. It's just everybody is assumed, which unfortunately increases your burn rate exponentially. But that's just a fact.
Have you guys been able to tell that story in the media, that things look a little bit different and firefighters are wearing PPE to protect themselves and the community? So when you arrive on the scene and you're taking a couple extra seconds, people aren't getting irate. Have you reached out and done that story?
Yeah, and they've been awesome. I don't know about you guys, but they've been awesome with us. People are like ridiculously.
There's been some Facebook interaction and YouTube videos posted, not necessarily by my department. Our leadership team is working in conjunction with the other municipalities. We have 13 cities, I believe it is, inside of my county that all have individual fire departments on top of ours, plus our county, you know, run EMS system. Their messaging is being created and disseminated as best as possible, and there's daily press releases coming from our PIO's office. The union's working with the management team as well. I mean, you're not seeing a lot of static or friction at this point, because we all know that we're doing the best we can. It's not that admin doesn't want to supply us. It's, well, if the resource is not available, then we have to consider alternate means at this point. So it's more of a collaborative to try to find alternate means to protect ourselves if necessary. But, we have a supportive administration, which is being as proactive as they can be.
Are they getting any kind of traction on their daily news releases?
So it's hard to say, to be honest with you. I really haven't seen any chatter in the media pertaining to Lake County, but here's the problem. We're a bordering community to Osceola and Orange County, and those are two of the hardest hit counties in Florida right now. Their numbers are just huge, and it seems like their daily briefings, which is kind of like what Governor DeSantis is doing right now. You'll have Mayor Demings and the community leaders from Osceola County alike, doing their daily briefings, just to keep everybody up to date. And you think about the actual community at large, and it's huge compared to us, and yet we do share similarities. I mean, we're connected. So we just haven't seen as much come out from Lake per se as we do with those neighboring counties because of what they have for infrastructure, more or less, the population.
A lot of that is the fact that they're just sending out news releases.
Absolutely, but they're also holding press releases,
covering
yeah,
briefings and reaching out to them saying, hey, we can help you tell the story in a different way is going to get you that media.
It's just we're a smaller part of the news market, so it's not like we get a lot of preferential treatment unless something major happens. They're going to focus on where the bodies are, and the bodies essentially, and I don't mean that in the negative way, but the bodies meaning the population, and the population centers are at the center of that market. So for them to go 30 minutes or 45 minutes out of that market, it's not beneficial for them.
But they're not coming 30 to 45 minutes anymore.
That's true.
This is an opportunity. This is probably your best opportunity to reach out and get to them, because it doesn't take anything extra. It's a different voice they can use. Start reaching out to those order individually.
And I'm not saying it won't happen. I think we're going to get to that point where we're going to have to go public more in the eye of the media, or more aggressive in the Facebook side. And I see that happening. I just at this point, we're not there yet. We're just not at that moment where we need to get drastic quite yet.
Anybody else got anything going on they want to share, talk about while we're here? Any other ideas they need help with? They want to ferret through the group?
Hey, Doug.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Ray Bryant, Local 4321. In addition to what you guys were talking about, a couple of things that we did that we think are pretty innovative and hopefully will work. And I'm not really at liberty to discuss, but we do have a rather large number of people that have been tested positive in our local. But one of the things is we're outfitting all of our rescues with MERV filters that capture the viruses, and then we're replacing those MERV filters on a regular basis, as well as the PPE that we have. So we're treating the rescue just like we're treating kind of like our own personal PPE equipment. And the department has been very responsive to that and has ordered a crap load of these MERV filters that just pop perfectly in. It takes 2 minutes. And that's part of our routine, as well as screening every member that comes into our station, every day at twice a day. And we're bioplanning or using whatever, every station pretty much has a bioplanet or an industrial fogger of some kind. And we're putting those out there as well. But I do have a question, Doug. With our it's probably higher than expected number of personnel who have been tested positive, without coming across to spook the community, how would you suggest to get that kind of information out there? And we're also wearing masks when we're just in the public, not on a call, just in the public. We're wearing masks, sending the signal to the community that it's a good idea for them to wear it as well. But we do have a high number of people that have it. And I just wanted to know what your opinion is on, do we try to get that message out, or do we just, let that kind of be behind the scenes?
I understand the concern.
And I'll mute.
A bunch of firefighters have COVID-19. Everybody looks like all of the firefighters have COVID-19. I think you put it out as, because of the risks of the job that firefighters have, because of their role as the first link in public health working in uncontrolled environments, these firefighters have been tested, diagnosed as COVID-19 positive. We're working to quarantine them and get them the treatment they need, but we also need additional testing to make sure that we can get them back to work quickly, and we know who else may be positive or not. I think I understand the concern, but I think you have to steer into that skid and put it out there as, this is how many of our firefighters have gotten sick because of their service to the community. Long term, short term, you may take a hit on that. People may be like, I don't want a firefighter coming to anything, whatever. But long term, people will remember that during the COVID-19 crisis, the firefighters were hard hit because they were there to serve the community. And I think that's a story that you need to put out there now so that people can remember it later. I mean, everybody else,
All right, thanks, Doug.
has a different theory. Go ahead and throw it out there. I'm more than willing to listen. But I think that's kind of, as we build that brand and set ourselves up for a post-COVID-19 economy, I think that story needs to be told.
Here in Minnesota, we haven't had much reports of like PPE shortages from across the state, as far as I understand. I know here at my home local, we are dealing with, we have more N95 masks than like simple masks, but they're expired. And so we're dealing with a lot of expired PPE that way.
Where do those come from?
Sorry, we had them, they were from back when H1N1 hit. So we still had those like in a storage locker here in the city.
So they were your own, and they didn't come from the state stockpile or FEMA or anything like that?
No, here at my home local, we haven't received any. I mean, we got some from one of the public health departments just south of here. But that was the PPE supply we had were gallons, because we didn't have any gallons at all.
I think I encourage your department to requisition and request updated non-expired gear from FEMA and from the stockpile. And then I think, look, I think what I'm finding more and more is our members are making the best of a bad situation. Like we do everything. We find a way to make it work. I think if you're working with expired gear, you're in that making it work category. Don't find yourself pigeonholed there. Make the requests to get what you need. And then if the state says, no, you've got what you need, even though it's expired, then I think it's a story you can tell. But until you try to find some kind of solution for it, I don't know that you can do a whole lot in the media. That make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Doug, Mike Bellamy in Tallahassee, Florida, local 2339 in the Panhandle District up here. Appreciate y'all putting the call on. Good to see everybody on. Just curious if anybody's found success like representing or speaking to media markets in your area, where you represent multiple locals across multiple jurisdictions. And if, you're finding success with that, what you're doing, et cetera, et cetera.
I can tell you we've had success because the IFF started a program 2 weeks ago where we started call any reporter anywhere that we saw was telling a COVID-19 story about public health. We started calling them, offering to give them the firefighter perspective and basically why this matters to firefighters and how people can help firefighters. We have had a lot of success with that. And we start with, make sure you tell the dispatcher everything. Don't withhold any information from them. and this is what you can expect. And then we kind of go wherever the reporter takes us, because we know this, we can tell the story we want a number of different ways, being guided by what they want. What I do encourage, every time you do an interview, every time you talk about anything, when they ask, the reporter will always ask you, what else should we know? And I always end up with simply, everybody wants to help. Everybody wants to donate pizzas or donate masks, and all of that is great. But the things people can do the most to help their firefighters are stay at home, help flatten the curve, and tell 911 all of your signs and symptoms when you call. That has been picked up more often than it has not, because that's that last thing they want to be able to tell people on the way out. That, I think, should be part of every story that we're telling, whether it's about PPE or us being part of the public health system or our firefighters who have been diagnosed with COVID. We need to tell people, we need them to stay home and be forthcoming and tell dispatchers everything they need to know, so that we can prepare ourselves to protect them and to protect the public. And I think the more we can get that kind of weaved into all of our messaging, the better we're going to be in the long run for it.
Good stuff. Thank you, Doug.
Anybody else?
I just had one thing I did kind of early on, because I sent the IAFF's little workbook or resource book to dispatch, and they were really grateful for it, and they immediately updated what they were doing. I also followed up about a week later with a thank you card I delivered down to COM, thanking them for helping us stay safe. And they're working their asses off for us, and not everybody's dispatch center is, but if they are, definitely recognize them, because we've been helping LE also stay safe, because they didn't have any PPE and we gave them ours. But it really, really made a difference in their communications with us.
Good. If nobody else has anything, I think we're going to wrap it up. Like all these calls, Mark and I will stay on until the end to answer any questions you may have, anything you want to kind of throw by us. Again, if you need help on this stuff, you all know how to get hold of me. If you don't have my contact information, tag me in the Facebook group and I'll reach out to you as quick as I can. You're not alone to try to tell these stories. I know the idea of pitching a story to the media is sometimes daunting, but we can help you get through it and help you prepare for it to make it the best that it can be on the back end. So unless there's any other questions, we'll stick around, and y'all have a good day and stay safe.
Thank you for coming by, everybody. If you want, we'll be back at 7 o'clock tonight. If you have any more questions, want to invite some other people, come on by.